In this video, I want to try weaving an abstract landscape painting, so let's get started. Full disclosure, this video is going to be in multiple parts because I really want to take my time and get into the details. So that's going to mean a lot of different colors of yarns, a lot of ends to tuck in, so it's going to be a bit of a slower project. Now, beside me, I'm already really loving this. I have all these different yarns that I pulled that I want to be in this piece. So we have a bunch of variations of greens and browns and beiges, and then we start moving up to more lighter beige and blues. And I'm already like, this is giving me life. I absolutely love these colors. So I'm gonna get a warp on this loom and we're just gonna go for it. I haven't yet decided how I want to display this piece once it's done, but I'm leaning toward it being possibly framed. I'm deciding between two warp strings. I have 4/8 cotton and 4/12 linen. So the advantages of the 4/8 cotton is it is the thinnest warp string that I personally use on a frame loom, and it's gonna be easier for it to disappear. However, with it being off-white, it might poke through here and there in a way that I don't love. So I'm leaning toward the 4/12 linen. This is a little bit thicker, but what I like about it is the fact that it is such a natural color. So when I hold it up with the different greens and even the blues, it's going to blend in a little bit better than something that is off-white. So you can see even right here, like the linen just, even if the linen does show through, it's such a natural, neutral color, and it isn't contrasting too much with the materials that I chose, that I think this one's gonna be the right choice. So I will be using our Spruce and Linen large flat pack frame loom because I wanna give myself a lot of space to work in so that I can get the detail that I'm looking for. I have two choices for how I warp the loom. I could go with a double warp, or I can do a single warp. So here are the thoughts that are running through my mind when I'm deciding between a single warp and a double warp. If I do the double warp, when I am using a really bulky yarn like this one, I can weave over 2, under 2, so it's just like a single warp. But having that double warp available to me means that when I want to use a much thinner yarn, such as this one, this is more of a worsted weight, medium weight yarn, I could weave over 1, under 1 with those thinner yarns. So I think I'm gonna opt for the double warp. When I say double warp, all I mean is that I'm going to be putting 2 strings between each notch. So you'll see that come through when I go back up to this one. So instead of going to the next notch, I'm going in the same notch as the previous string. All right, if you're curious about the details, this loom is about a 4 ends per inch loom, and I've now warped on a total of 98 warp strings. So this is a decent sized piece for, you know, a tabletop frame loom. All right, so I've just put some painter's tape on the back of my loom so that when I set it down on my table, it's not going to shift around on me. See our older videos if you want to see me struggling with that. Whew. A blank canvas is a little bit nerve-wracking, I'm not gonna lie to you. But what I did was I went on Pinterest and I just started searching for abstract landscape paintings. I want to be careful not to take reference from any one painting, but to look at a bunch and sort of get a sense of what I want to create. And now, even if I did directly copy a certain painting, it's gonna look entirely different because it's in yarn. But I still wanna, you know, not directly take every bit of information for this piece from one singular source. I'm adding in some cardstock at the bottom just to make sure that I'm weaving straight. And as I mentioned, I'm not entirely sure how I want to display this in the end. So I do want to give myself a little bit of space, not only to finish off the warp string ends at the bottom, but also just in case I do want to go back and add a fringe later, I think this will give me enough space that I could potentially do that. I'm going to start this out with a twining stitch to make sure everything will be secure on the bottom of the loom when I take this off. For that, I'm going to use this thin cotton yarn, and I don't want to make anything too solid of a line. So I'll do a twining stitch followed by 1 to 2 rows of plain weave. So I'm going to give myself enough yarn to do that. All right, I have my base work done. So I have a piece of cardstock woven in, I have my twining stitch and 2 rows of plain weave. So I'm ready to start, which is often the hardest part. So starting with darker colors makes sense in my head. So I'm gonna do that. Now I have to decide which of the darker colors I want to use. I love that this very greeny brown blends in well with the base work that I just did. So I'm gonna start with that. My plan here is to keep each color line quite thin so that I can get a lot of different colors into a small area, making it feel a bit more like paint. When you see beautiful landscape paintings, the thing that always sticks out to me is how many different colors are actually used to create a landscape painting. There's so many variations. And so by keeping my weaving lines very narrow, that is going to help me get the effect, I hope, of a painting. I'm gonna grab a decent amount of length for this just so that I don't grab too little and want to use more. However, I may end up only using one strand. As I mentioned, I am completely winging this. It's just something I've really wanted to try. And I thought, what better thing to do than to film it, because maybe together we can discover something new. What I really like about this cotton frizz ribbon, it just kind of clicked to me right now, is it's gonna kind of mimic grass, which I love the idea of that. So I'm gonna pull little bubbles kind of like I do with merino wool roving. So everywhere that the cotton frizz is going over top the warp strings, I can pull up just a small little loop just to give it more texture. I'll go a little further with this one. Now, what color do I want to use next? This is where I'm going to start laying different colors over top to see what they could look like. It's just one of those super simple ways of not actually weaving something in before you try it out. I also have this. This is another more subtle green. Maybe that could go on top. I turned around before I got to where this one is ending. And the reason for that is that I do want to create some slight hill type shapes. I'm not going to be going for anything super dramatic in this one, but I do want a little bit of that organic shape to come through, because I mean, the majority of landscapes we're going to see aren't going to be all perfectly linear. And at the start of this, I do have to kind of trust the process and just keep weaving things in to see if they're gonna work. For me, the best way to see if something's gonna work is to just try it. And then if it doesn't look good, I can always take it out. And that's what I love about weaving, because it's one of those crafts where, you know, nothing's permanent. And it's easy enough to take something out and reuse that material that you had woven in for something else in somewhere else. So I really love that, because it feels like there's a bit less pressure to get it right the first time. Like, you have room to play around. I have two very straight lines now, so I might want to potentially just randomly put some color in. What would that look like if I just, and I haven't even cut a piece of this, I'm just gonna try it to see what it looks like. So if I put a little piece of that green here, and then I were to go under several strings and weave more of it over here, what would that look like? And I do like the idea of not having every color, again, in a straight line. Now, the thing about yarn that is different than paint is we can't really fully blend things together in a way that is fully mixing two colors of yarn at the same time. I'm gonna take this one out for now. It's a little light feeling right now, and maybe it would be better to bring back in this dark brown, and we can sort of mix these darker colors together for a little bit. This time, when I go in with this dark brown, instead of going over one under one, which is what I did down here, I'm going to do the over two under two, because I don't want to see the warp strings like I am down here. So I want to see what that would look like. That's a way to better blend the yarns, is using a thick one followed by a thin one. It's very subtle, but I like it. So now what I'm doing here is I am turning around closer and closer to the end so that we're building up a little bit of a hill on this side. And I don't want to do too much of the same color all at once. I know it's very subtle and you guys are seeing this a little bit further away. I'm gonna zoom in a little bit for you. So there's not a ton between those, but it does add some really beautiful detail in here that I'm quite enjoying. Now I'm trying to decide if I should put just maybe even one strand of something lighter in here, just as a slight highlight before going back in with the dark. Let's try it. I'm gonna start it kind of between where I ended this dark green and where I ended the cotton frizz. I'm gonna lay this back over top to see where I'm at, and I think I wanna add one more row of this lighter color because I don't think it's going to show through much with just the one row. I'm adding one more partial row of the cotton frizz to our little hill. That's looking really pretty to me. So I'm gonna cut this off. I'm gonna leave myself a tail. I'll tuck this back in the end. As I mentioned, there are gonna be a lot of ends to tuck on a piece like this, but I am going to hold off on doing that until the very end. I don't love flipping my loom back and forth because I like to tape it down, but also just in case I do decide to go back and change something, then everything isn't tucked in already. This is a really good start, I have to say. It's looking a lot more natural than I even imagined that it could. Now I need to start building something up over here. A lighter color, I think is gonna be the right choice just because this is very dark and I don't want it to feel all one note. We wanna have some variation going throughout. This one is really pretty. It's a silk chiffon, recycled silk chiffon. Has quite a bit of a knot right here. Yeah, some lighter colors going into this section will sort of brighten things up over here. And I might just go ahead and take this lighter brown all the way to the end. Before I start on this color, I'm wondering about doing a little bit of knotting with maybe this green. So we'd be going in with this darker green to a slightly lighter green. Let's try it. This one is definitely gonna be all about experimenting and seeing what exactly we can come up with. I definitely like this added texture. I'm wondering if all these colors are blending in a little bit too much. However, I do want to bring in this lighter color. Maybe what I could do is push up all that knotting I just did, and I could add the light green underneath just to give a little bit of separation between this really dark section and this section that I want to bring a bit lighter, because I don't want it to sort of all fully muddy together, but I do want all the colors to blend together at the same time. So it's a bit of a balance trying to figure out how we can use similar colors, but not have them all just end up looking like one brown thing. Does that make sense? So what I could do is I could actually bring this silk chiffon all the way across and then have the knotting go on top of that. So why don't we try that to see what that would look like? And it would be much faster if I just used my tapestry needle. And by the way, we do get questions occasionally still about our tapestry needles. They are our Spruce and Linen tapestry needles. You can check them out at spruceandlinen.com. And below this video, particularly if you're watching on your phone, there's a little shop section, and I will link all the products I'm using that are from our shop there. And then over here, I could start pulling those little loops again so that it feels a bit thicker on this end. And then let's push the knotting back down Again, that's something I love about weaving. I love how I can say, okay, I just wove this in. I want to put something underneath it. So I just sort of shove it up and then weave something underneath it. I like that a little bit better. We're getting that highlight over top of this section. It's giving some separation between this dark green and this dark green. They're very different. And I know this one on camera, it is more brown, but I'd almost call it like a very deep olive brown green. Is that enough descriptors? So that feels better to me. I might want to take out a little bit of this knotting because I want to build this section up a bit now as well. So we could do more knotting or bring in another yarn as well. So I have this boucle yarn, which has so much texture just all on its own. So something actually I'm seeing that I don't love here is the way that these knots are sitting exactly the same as the chiffon. So they're both going over these warp strings, and then we have all these warp strings right here showing. So I'm backing up my knotting so I don't have that because I'm not loving it. To counteract that, I could just do another knot right next to this one, or I could go over these two warp strings and under the next two, and then restart my knotting over here. I'm feeling as though this section needs some more shape to it. I want to bring it up a bit over here. So we have to decide how to do that. Which color would look great for that, to just add in maybe like a whole section of just a more dramatic shape. I may take this a little bit further. Actually, okay, now I'm pushing up that stuff again. And I'm going to take this back this way underneath, trying not to let these warp strings suck in too much. A little bit is normal, but I definitely want to be aware of that. And then just with my fingers, I'm going to take this right to here. And we'll bring all of that back down. That feels a little better. So I might just leave this tail hanging out over here while I figure out what I want to do here. What's next? So I do have this beige color, and this would really lighten things up. So I could do a small section of that. I'm not gonna lie to you, this is tricky. And you know, I'm not a painter, so I don't have a good idea in my head of how a painting would come together and how I can sort of integrate that with weaving. That might be something I need to visit, is just, you know, maybe learning how to paint a landscape so that I can have a better idea of how those come together with paint and then translate that in yarn. But we're doing our best here. I definitely like the idea of this linen type color. It's very similar to the color of my warp string. So I'll grab a length of that, and I'm gonna weave that in with the over two, under two again. I'm really trying to not let the shapes be too uniform, which is a bit tricky. I tried to go a little chunkier with a section and it just wasn't working for me. So I think the trick still is, in my mind, to keep things only a little bit of each color at a time. So I'm wondering about bringing this color back in to start tying in with this. I shouldn't be super surprised, but it's challenging. Now, I do have this orange color. So that could be the light color that I bring in. I also have this kind of rust brown, which I don't think, ooh, hang on. I do feel like there's a lack of contrast happening. Like, I have all these colors and I do like it, but I think the next thing I do needs to be something a bit different. I don't think that's it. Okay, I'm still just playing around, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm doing my best to just not get frustrated with myself, because I think when you're trying something new and you don't really feel like you know what you're doing, it can be really, really easy to get frustrated with yourself. But it's like, if you've never done it before, what are you gonna do? So I'm gonna bring this back a little further. So we'll keep that as a bit of a chunk. That's a chunk. I've regretted my decision here, so we're gonna bring that out. Already like what that looks like better. Questioning this color. I said this was gonna be slow going, but I don't think I fully recognized how slow going it could be. So what about after this section? I'm gonna try to put some of this back in, and maybe it doesn't even need to go all the way across. What if it just started here? I really like this. So maybe I was trying to work in too small of sections and that just wasn't really working for me. Now, what does it look like when I bring this back down? I'm wondering if this is too green now. Well, I brought it back almost to the beginning again, but I'm determined to really love this piece. And it's not that I don't love other pieces that I make, but some are just more challenging than others. I'm going to weave this back in over top the green. So I just put one strand of this light color in. I want to try to create a bit of a chunkier shape like this and then taper it down. And I'm not entirely sure how to do that except for potentially thinning it out on one end. If I thin it out like that, and I've tapered it here, so I'm going to pull that down there and see if that'll work. So that'll get tucked in back there. Now I'm wondering about bringing back in this color to bring it so it's not just on one side. So I'm gonna come up beside this green. I'm wondering if part of my issue is trying to stay too narrow with all of my lines. I do think that I like this. I love this chunky section right here. And I've created a bit of a chunkier section over here with the cotton frizz ribbon. I'm going to tuck that back in there. Now I have to figure out what to do over top of this section. So I could bring back this same green, kind of bring it down there. Or I could try to fill up the center a bit before going over top of this. This green is a little bit more in between this lighter one and this one, so I'm going to try that. I kind of wish this came to more of a point. So can I do that here by just bringing this a little bit further? I'm liking how this is coming together more now. We've got a bit more dramatic shapes and it's I don't have much else to say other than that. Now I'm wondering if I should bring in this off-white yarn again. And I need to decide how far up my actual land part of the landscape is gonna be. And then I need to start on the sky. So I don't think it's gonna be much more than this, but maybe a little. I'll try weaving in this light color again and just see where we're at. Does that look good? Does it need it? Okay, okay. I'm feeling a lot better now. It was feeling a little bit nerve-wracking there for a minute. Where are we going with this? How big do I want the sky as well? Because I have a feeling I think I'm gonna do quite a lot of sky. So let's see what color options we have to do just a little bit more. So I could add some of this in. That's a pretty good option. I do also have this, but I'm not sure that's right. This would certainly be the most contrasting, but I'm not sure that's contrasting in a good way. I could add a little bit more of this so that it ties in with this and I could just go part way across. I think we're gonna try that. I'm feeling like this side needs to be lightened a little bit more if we wanna go any darker again. I don't think that's gonna look right. Maybe we need something built up in the middle. I do like the idea of this, but I'm not sure about this color. The one thing that is nicer about paint, you just make a color darker on a whim. I'm happy to inform you that I am liking where this is headed now. I'm gonna cut some of this excess off over here. I feel pretty confident doing that at this point. Now, I think I should probably start the sky next. So I need just to decide how I want to end off this section. So do I want it to be fading in more, or do I want it to be a little bit more of a dark line to separate the background from the foreground? Could add a few layers of this brown, which I think could be pretty. Let's try the brown. There, that feels a little bit more natural to me. Just a little bit of filling in there, but nothing too harsh. I'm also even wondering if I even need to go over this section. There's something about this section that's just not quite what I want it to be. I'm wondering if it would look better if this brown actually went underneath the hill and then the lighter color had come above it, but we already have this brown here, so I'm also not entirely sure that would be a great look. Maybe it can just go up a little bit. Okay, I have made a sufficient mess. I have woven, I have unwoven. I have been weaving for 2 hours and 45 minutes. Okay, I just wanna let you know that because I know that the power of YouTube and time lapse can make it seem like things don't take very long. But as this was a totally new thing for me to try, it took me a long time. I wove and I unwove quite a lot, and I'm not mad about it. I think I'm enjoying where this is at more than before, so that's a good thing. And I think next time we will start working on the sky, and who knows if I'll potentially unweave more. One of the things that always helps me really know if I like something is to walk away and have some time away from a piece and come back to it, because sometimes things become so much more obvious than when I've been staring at it for a long time. So I'm gonna let myself do that. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you in part 2. Bye.